Hey guys, it's your pal Victor here, and we're gonna do a breakdown of all the Easter eggs, and we're gonna talk about, spoiler-wise, the first episode of What If right now. So yeah, that was the first episode of What If, and it was really cool. I enjoyed this one a lot. This episode basically was, what if Peggy Carter took the super soldier serum instead of Captain America? And I liked that it was kind of like this butterfly effect thing, where basically like one little choice here, Peggy choosing to stay on the floor instead of going to the gallery to watch Steve get the super soldier serum, kind of changes the course of everything. So we're gonna break this down right now. So the big thing here is, one, Stanley Tucci is there as Dr. Erskine, which was really cool. The guy who did the voice for Chris Evans did a really good Chris Evans character, did a good job of sounding like Chris Evans. And it's actually Haley Atwell as Captain Carter, and she sounded like she had a blast. So let's start breaking this down. So Peggy stays on the floor, and what happens is she's able to spot the bomb that goes off, that messes up the experiment, and she's able to kind of tweak things around. The first thing that happens is, you'll notice a guy gets shot on the bridge and taken out right away. That's actually Tommy Lee Jones's character from Captain America and the First Avenger, and that explains why he's not in this episode at all. But it was kind of a good nod to put him in there, and like, this is how we're writing him off, because he's an important guy. He's one of the founders of the SSR, which became SHIELD, so he's not in the episode at all. And Bradley Whitford's character kind of takes the spot of being this kind of like misogynist guy who kind of doubts Peggy's abilities, but in doing so kind of ends up pushing her to be the best she can be. So big changes happen when Peggy becomes Captain Britain here. One, like, Howard makes the vibranium shield for her and gives her like this custom uniform, so she's like Captain Britain, which is also a nod to the superhero Captain Britain, who's in Excalibur. Basically, he's also Psylocke's brother from the X-Men, so Brian Braddock. So there you go, some nods to the X-Men and the legacy of X-Men. So what ends up happening is, Peggy ends up capturing the Tesseract kind of easily in this, and the guy she takes it from is Arnim Zola, who later becomes the guy who fucks up SHIELD and the Winter Soldier. He actually gets taken out way later in the actual Captain America and the first Avenger movie, and there is a nod to that here too when Peggy's like, goes to interrogate him. Tommy Lee Jones interrogates him in Captain America and the First Avenger with a steak dinner. Here he sings really easily after being threatened by her. So now SHIELD actually has the Tesseract way early on, and it's given to Howard Stark. And what does Howard Stark do? He develops an Iron Man suit that looks a lot like the one Tony develops in the first Iron Man movie. Here it's called the Hydra Stomper, and it's a lot more well defined. And Steve Rogers becomes Iron Man, and that is pretty damn cool. So that's another fun little Easter egg subverting the first Iron Man movie. Also, Peggy ends up going and saving the 82nd Airborne, which is super cool, and which includes Dum Dum Dugan and Bucky. It doesn't include the Asian Howling Commando, who ends up being the the ancestor of Peter Parker's principal, though. So I thought that was kind of odd. But yeah, so Peggy ends up leading the Howling Commandos, and Steve becomes Iron Man. It's kind of like a take on Rusty and Big Guy the Boy Robot, which is a comic book that came out in the 90s. So you should look that up. That's another little Easter egg here. And then there's the Easter eggs involving Red Skull here, who's not voiced by Hugo Weaving. It sounds like he's voiced by the actor who did his voice in Endgame, and his face mask also does not look like Hugo Weaving. But the thing that happens here is, he doesn't, Hugo Weaving doesn't get the Tesseract, so he doesn't get to make the energy weapons. They actually end up getting put in the Iron Man suit that Steve Rogers wields, which is ironic because if you'll remember in Captain America, the Winter Soldier, and Avengers, it was Avengers, it was a really big issue with Steve that they're making weapons out of the Tesseract? That's not cool, but here, hey, it's a whole different story because, but then that kind of leads back to Winter Soldier where Steve's like, back then we made decisions that we made us sleep not so well at night. So it's okay for Steve in World War II to use Tesseract weapons. Not so much in the modern age. So Red Skull doesn't get his energy weapons. But he does have, we do get a kind of a redux of that scene where he gets the Tesseract initially, and he ends up with the wall that has the Tree of the World Yggdrasil in it, and one of the Nazi guys kind of tells Red Skull, hey, what are you doing playing with metal trinkets when you should be doing stuff for the Fuhrer, which is kind of a flip on the dialogue in the first Avenger where Red Skull's making fun of the first Indiana Jones movie. We're saying, meanwhile, the Fuhrer searches for trinkets in the desert, which was a play on the Ark of the Covenant here. So when Red Skull kind of makes that that Stargate out of the Tesseract when he gets it later on, are we supposed to believe Ark of the Covenant being used to kind of power that thing? I mean, it is a pathway, with the Tesseract and all that. Possible, but either way, it's a play on that dialogue. All right, and then here's another big Easter egg. You'll notice when they show Red Skull's castle there that it happens to look a lot like the Disney logo, doesn't it? It's like, hey, why is Red Skull's hideout Sleeping Beauty Castle? Well, here's where I'm going to enlighten you. The castle that Red Skull is in the German Alps. It is called Neuschwanstein Castle, and it's a real place. You can go to it, and Walt Disney actually went there, and it's the inspiration for Sleeping Beauty Castle at Disneyland, and it's also, guess what, the Disney logo. So kind of a cute, subversive way to put, Sleeping Beauty Castle in this episode, because literally you can see it's just like, oh shit, they just made a model of the castle and just made it all like hydra'd out. I don't know, I thought that was super fun. But yeah, there you go. Sleeping Beauty Castle is in this episode, and it is all hydra'd out because it's a real place in Germany. And then here's a combination of things. One, you'll notice when Red Skull opens his portal to get the champion from another world, is that Cthulhu? What could that be? Actually, friends, it could be Cthulhu, but more likely than not, it is Shuma-Gorath, which is an otherworldly old one, which is very prominent in Marvel Comics. Usually lives outside, floating in its own space. Has a big eyeball at the center, but it's all tentacles, just like that. If you've ever played the 1990s video game Capcom vs. Marvel, you probably played as Shuma-Gorath at one time. Very popular character from the Doctor Strange kind of old ones canon. But yeah, it's kind of a deep cut there, having Captain Carter fight Shuma-Gorath, which is Marvel's version of Cthulhu, essentially. So that's pretty dope. And also that whole battle scene where she grabs the sword from, right there, grabs the sword to fight Shuma-Gorath. It's very similar to the original Guillermo del Toro Hellboy movie, where he fights Cthulhu, or one of the old ones, that's gradually been getting into Rasputin, fights with an old sword. And it's also kind of a nod to like the Black Knight, and because she's got a sword and the vibranium shield, which is really cool. And it's also kind of, that whole scene is also kind of a nod to how like Steve found himself out of time with the Tesseract in the first Captain America movie. He crashed onto the ice, suspended animation. Here she just goes into another dimension, and when Nick Fury and Hawkeye bring her out. The other fun little Easter egg here is also when Howard Stark is brought into the battle here, and Captain Carter says, "Hey, push some buttons," and oh, it's all in German. And then Captain Carter tells him, "Hey, you be useful." And then Howard Stark throws out a quip about, well, when me and Hedy Lamarr were together, we did more than just canoodle. Not so much, I'm just paraphrasing, but Hedy Lamarr was actually a very well-known actress at the time, kind of like a bombshell. But what we've come to know about Hedy Lamarr in the last few years is she was something of an amateur scientist, and she has some patents that at the time she actually helped in a lot of scientific discovery at the time. And apart from being a Hollywood icon, she along with a co-inventor named George Antheil invented a radio system for preventing jamming using a system known as frequency hopping, and that's something that they still use today. So she was kind of like actor celebrity / genius, not so much different from Tony Stark, and her patents are still kind of used, are kind of like the ground for what we know today for Wi-Fi and GPS and Bluetooth. So isn't that kind of crazy? And that was like a throwaway reference in this episode. So there you go. That's basically the gist of most of the big Easter eggs in this episode. If I'm missing anything, you can let me know. I mean, he writes for Brooklyn on the Hydra Stomper, which is kind of like, Steve always gets in fights. You could do this all day. Lots of little stuff like that, but that's the big stuff you may have missed. So there you go. And overall, I think this was a really well done episode. It ends kind of a forlorn note, but so did Captain America and the First Avenger. And it's nice to know that Steve probably ended up founding S.H.I.E.L.D. instead of Peggy, because why else would Nick Fury and Barton be there? Think about it. Oh, there's one more. The whole deal with when they get on the train and you think Hydra Stomper gets blown up. Before that, Bucky almost falls off the train, and then Captain Carter pulls him off, and then Bucky says, "Oh, you almost tore my arm off," because in that scenario, Bucky actually lost his arm. That's how he became the Winter Soldier. There you go. So that's pretty much it. There's no punching out Hitler, which would have been fun to see. But yeah, I think that's all the Easter eggs. If you can think of any, post them in the comments below, and I look forward to seeing them. Until next time, see ya.